Harry Kane. What a player, what a striker this guy is. He's a near perfect number 9, but he can do far more than just score. He can do it all, drop deep and contribute to build-up, play inch-perfect through balls to his overlapping teammates, cross, get on the end of crosses, finish from distance, convert with his head, with both feet, and the list goes on. Even when Tottenham are struggling and finishing in 8th, he's still scoring a ton of goals, and goals, and goals, and goals, as Kane's career will be remembered for the records he has already broken and the record he's still yet to break, the all-time scoring leader for the Premier League. That is, if he chooses to stay in England once his contract with Spurs is up next summer. Seems like that's his preference. All the while, us football enjoyers have all had a take on Kane and whether he shows loyalty for Spurs and staying or a lack of ambition, whether he's taking the easy way out by staying and focusing only on goals, or whether he should be looked at honorably for taking the hardest route possible to silverware. Well, not the hardest route possible, but close to. Guys, I'm Adrian, and welcome to the channel. The season may be over, but we roll on here at Rabona TV. Well, the European seasons at least. I went to a Montreal Impact game the other day. Beautiful, and yes, I still say Impact. All right, let's talk about Harry Kane, now that the intros are out of the way. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more videos weekly. By the way, you may notice my lovely kit, which happens to be that of 2022 Indian Super League champions Hyderabad FC. It's easily the most unique in my collection, and I got it from Sangalo, linked below, who sell Hyderabad kits and numerous other clubs that you wouldn't typically find in your typical kit shop, because Sangalo isn't a typical kit shop. If you want to buy some very unique kits for your own collection, do check them out with the link in the description and use the promo code RabonaTV for 10% off of your order. Thanks, Sangalo. I think the best place to start would be this whole seemingly inaccurate idea of Kane simply showing zero interest in leaving Tottenham. Hey man, it's a nice stadium. Perhaps he's a big architecture head, you know? Plus he's an NFL guy. I can't relate, but Spurs is the hotspot in England for NFL. Okay, disingenuous takes aside, and in being honest here, this is the most common sentiment that is attributed to Kane. He lacks ambition because he places goal-scoring records above silverware. We've all fallen into that line of thinking from time to time, haven't we? And we'll speak more on this later in the video, the records, etc. But perhaps it's a bit unfair on the guy. Why? Because of his current contract at Tottenham. His brother Charlie Kane landed him a new contract back in 2018 that certainly assured Kane of a great financial future. However, it also took all control over said future away from his brother Harry, as there was no release clause inserted in the contract, and he left himself at the mercy of a man in Levy who is unwilling to sell Kane domestically. Move him abroad? Sure, but anyone who wants him in the Premier League will have to pay some Mbappe 2017 prices, you know, the record for a transfer within a domestic league. And as far as ambition talk goes, Kane did indeed try to force a move 2 summers ago, and his brother Charlie tried to pull out all of the stops when it came to feeding the media information to try to force Levy's hand to sell him to Man City. That didn't work ultimately, as it was a sobering reminder for the Canes. Forget about gentlemen's agreements, they aren't binding. The only thing that's binding is the 6-year contract that Kane signed in 2018. The rest, excuse my French, but hey, tough shit, man. So he did try to leave. That takes care of the lack of ambition aspect, but no doubt he and Levy would have been forced to speak plainly with each other. You don't leave unless a domestic side reaches our valuation of you, which is crazy high, or elsewhere in Europe comes close to that valuation. A lot of people point to the likes of Francesco Totti as an example to follow for Harry Kane. Other examples would be Paolo Maldini or Ryan Giggs, guys who stuck with one club throughout the entirety of their career. Kane, of course, went on loan a few times in his early days of professional football, but I think it's fair to say that he can be included in this group of guys, but maybe in a subgroup, given he spent 2 years away on loan from Tottenham to get playing time. He never left the club, he just went on loan. But beyond that detail, I think this is a bit of a false equivalency still for another reason: success. Success will have no doubt played a huge role in at least 2 of these players' careers, and potentially the third as well. With Maldini and Giggs, they happened to be at AC Milan and Manchester United. In Giggs' case, he won his first piece of silverware, the League Cup and the UEFA Super Cup, in 1991. At this time, he was just 18 years of age. 2 years later, he won the league with United, and the rest is history. And so from the off, you have Giggs winning silverware at a young age and playing in a team that was continuing to win silverware. If you're winning trophies domestically and at the continental level, which he was, it's easier to stick around and easier for people to understand why you've done so. Why leave such a good thing? The same could be said of Paolo Maldini. Well, first of all, he's part of a family dynasty at AC Milan, and if nothing else, tradition will have kept him there. But again, it just so happens that he was part of one of the most successful clubs in the world from a young age. By the time he turned 19, he had already won Serie A with Milan. At the age of 20, he'd already won the European Cup. Similar to how Giggs was part of that core of players under Fergie who won everything, Maldini was part of one of the best teams of all time in Arrigo Sacchi's Immortals, as Maldini would go on to win 3 European Cups in a 5-year stretch and dominate domestically in the 1990s as well. When you're playing in a side like this, your challenge is converted from winning silverware to defending your title as the top dog. A different challenge, but similar. Consistency is the mark of a truly great side, right? When it comes to Totti, that's where Kane's situation is closer, but still not a perfect equivalent. The famous quote that is always brought up is how Totti turned down moves abroad, including how he almost joined Real Madrid in 2004, because winning titles with AS Roma means far more than winning a title with anyone else, such as Real Madrid, where that's already an expectation. His quote actually read, "Winning 1 league title at Roma to me is worth winning 10 at Juventus or Real Madrid." With clubs like Roma, and Tottenham I guess too, there isn't an expectation of titles. They are almost never the favorite. However, by the time he was 25, he had done the unthinkable of winning a league title with AS Roma. Later, he helped Roma to consecutive Coppa Italia titles. And the timing of his quote is important as well. Had he said the quote prior to winning anything with the club, well, it would have hit even harder. I mean, it's a hard-hitting quote as is, and the veracity of it certainly helps. However, when you consider that Totti said this in April of 2010 after winning 3 major domestic trophies with AS Roma, it's not that it makes it any less true, just that it is a bit easier to say that once you've already won something. You know what I mean? Kane could say the same thing when it comes to Tottenham, holding out hope that he'll one day get that piece of silverware that will be worth 10 times that of a trophy won with a habitual winning club. But all of the examples prior had won a trophy by the age of 25 at the latest, so you can see how that 6-year contract that he signed at 25 years old has locked him in a bit, to the point where even if he had wanted to leave to chase trophies before, he couldn't have. But he has still been able to chase scoring records. Yeah. I'll be honest, I've been conflicted on Kane and how he has stuck around at Tottenham. On the one hand, I feel like it would be such a shame that such an incredible footballer could potentially go without winning a single piece of silverware in their career, should he end up staying at Tottenham. And another big should coming here, and should Tottenham not suddenly become a trophy contender next season. Who knows? The probability isn't that high, but with 3 domestic competitions and no European football next season under new manager Ange Postecoglou, who knows? They could potentially win a League Cup or an FA Cup, but that would be tough for them if this past season is anything to go off of. And let's be real, you can only predict the future by considering the past. And Tottenham's past has been barren of any silverware for 15 years now, and last season they didn't look anywhere close. It would be a shame for him to end up with no titles at the end of his career, and just some records, some scoring records, I should say. Sorry, I say just as if the all-time top scorer in the Premier League isn't a ridiculous feat that any striker would dream of achieving. You have some permanence in your legacy when people constantly point to the fact that no other player has scored more goals than you, that you've put the ball in the back of the net more than any other person in the history of the competition. That's an insane feat, and the mark of a Premier League legend for sure. However, there's just one problem with chasing records. They can be broken. Your achievement isn't erased per se, but it can be overwritten or one-upped by someone. There's always a threat that it will be taken from you. However, you can't say the same for silverware. Once you win a trophy, it isn't taken from you. That's on your permanent record and cannot be taken. Another team can't come along and challenge you for a trophy you won years ago. I mean, yes, there are instances where titles are stripped, but it takes something at the level of Calciopoli in Serie A for that to happen. The odds are incredibly low. And so for this reason, if we are to assume that Kane is prioritizing the scoring record over winning silverware, then that's a bit of a shaky ground to stand upon if you're Harry Kane. But again, I don't necessarily think that's the case here. Kane is an intelligent guy, and no doubt he would understand that he could have the best of both worlds, as Manchester City could have provided him in the summer of 2021. But they moved on by signing Haaland, which bears the question of where could Kane go within England? United is the most obvious choice, but barring any takeover confirmations this summer, the Glazers certainly won't pony up the cash to pay for Kane this summer when he could come for free, in quotations, as there are sign-on bonuses and a cut for brother Chucky. But why would you do that? Why would you pay now when you can get him for free next summer? If Kane is to leave this summer, I wouldn't expect anything until the very end of this term, and I'll tell you why I think this. At the moment, Levy holds all the cards. I mean, with no release clause and a lengthy contract, he was always going to hold all the cards. Kane could leave Tottenham next summer for free if he so chooses, and he would have the liberty of choosing his next club, of which, despite being 30, turning 31 at the time, you can bet plenty of teams would still be interested in the services of one of the best number 9s in the world at the moment. But it does beg a really great question. If Kane was always going to leave Tottenham in the summer of 2024 when his contract is up, then what does Levy gain from having him around for one more season? Without European competition, as mentioned, he could potentially contribute to a cup push, as it's difficult to see how Spurs finish ahead of the likes of Manchester City in the league. But is a single cup worth more than about, let's call it 80 million to Spurs? 80 million or so, arbitrary number here by the way, but 80 million or so that could be reinvested into the squad to help Postecoglou build the club in his vision? I'm not sure it makes much sense to lose him for free. Who knows, maybe there's another contract on the table that's close to getting Kane's signature on it, but in the absence of that, losing Kane for free with the hope and prayer that you will break your 15-year trophy drought makes absolutely no sense to me. Whatever happens, and this is ultimately where it begins and ends for all of us really, so long as Harry Kane is happy with his choices, what all of us think doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't matter in the slightest. It's his choice, and even though it may not align with what we think would be best for him or what people think he should prioritize in his career, none of that matters. He made his choices, and whether he's happy with them or regrets them, he will make the next one as well, based on what he wants. So what's my point in all of this? It's basically that there's a ton of nuance involved with Kane's situation. Saying he has a lack of ambition, I find that completely unfair, as his contract keeps him at Spurs, and he did indeed try to force a move 2 years ago. In saying that there's no difference between him and guys like Totti when it comes to representing one club no matter if they win titles or not, there are some similarities in that he's sticking with a club that doesn't win often, as Roma didn't back then. But again, Totti had a major win by the time he was 25. Kane is 30 next month without a title to speak of. And if he does put records above titles, as some assume he is doing, first of all, this would only be applicable if he renews with Spurs, as he has no choice but to see out his contract at the moment. But if he does renew, surely he understands the impermanence of records versus titles. Let's call it there, eh? Thanks as always for watching, guys, and for taking time out of your day to spend a few minutes with me. A like is always appreciated if you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and check out Sangalo linked below, but failing that, have a great day. Ciao.